The sanctity of boredom. They say that boredom is a luxury and even something of a privilege, since if you have the capability of feeling bored, you have a qualified detachment from reality, which actually makes boredom something of a sanity. And if you reach that far in reasoning about it, your next step will be to fill the vacuum of boredom with activity of any kind, and even just of mental stuff, and thus your boredom is transformed into energy, which actually is a moral power that could practically be applied constructively to only positive and beneficial ends. Is this just nonsense, or does it make any sense? That is another matter of discussion for expanding the philosophy of boredom. The weight of memories. They wear you down, the fond remembrances of golden moments and of friendships gone, down in the limbo lane of graveyards, of the moments and the opportunities that you so miserably failed to take good care of, and to use, instead of letting them slip by and down to never more return again, but still remaining as the painful scars of dreams that shattered, but stayed on as ghosts of haunting and unpleasant, cruel importuning, constant weird reminders of a life that went to waste unnecessarily. And there is nothing you can do to dress those wounds. You have to live with them in constant gnawing torture, sabotaging everything you do at present, making concentration more and less impossible, since they will haunt you even more perpetually with even greater force the more you have to focus. Still, the soothing comfort and advantage of these constantly disturbing ghosts is that among them there is softness and bright stars of pleasure and enjoyment, love and bliss, which still might ease your life by reappearing in delightful dreams of sweetness and good sleep. And that's the ultimate salvation, hope and light of it, that this might be perpetual once you may lay down forever. Minnestyngd. Det tynger ner dig, alla kära minnens gyllene ögonblick, av vänner du förlorat, ner i kyrkogårdars limbogränd, av ögonblickets gyllene chanser som du missade och bara gick förbi och underligt att ta tillvara. För att bara snöpligt låta den försvinna och aldrig mera komma åter, men som lika väl förblir som gamla ärr av drömmar som förintades, men förblev som obehagliga hemsökelsefantomer, grymt kontinuerligt påminnande om ett liv som gick till spillo helt i onödan. Och det är ingenting som du kan göra åt att hela såren. Du måste leva med den ständigt gnagande tortyren och det sabotage mot allt vad du försöker göra, som förintar all koncentration och gör den omöjlig, då den bara måste plåga dig mer oavbrutet och mer plågsamt ju mer du försöker fokusera. Likväl medför dessa envist störande fantomers plåga en förmildrande omständighet och tröst i det att det finns någon bildhet i den ljusglimt av välsignelse och kärleksnöjens njutning som fortfarande kan mildra livet för dig genom uppenbarelser av ljuvhetsdrömmar i god sömn. Och det är deras hopp och ljus och slutliga försoning, att det då kan pågå för alltid när du till slut får äntlig evig vila. Life's last comfort. Your life is a fake, and you cannot make it any better, since all that you have done is done and can no longer be undone, just like all that you never did no longer can be done. Since life in general towards the end is just a sum of sadness of lost opportunities. What you accomplished will perhaps remain for some to be appreciated, while the major part is just a sorry waste that you had best forget and leave behind, especially if you at all still can find anything to do. There is a future always. No one ever could discern or guess what it would bring, and that at least will constantly remain life's main excitement, which perhaps could be your one and lasting comfort, that as long as you remain alive, that will remain and carry on. Life's constant humiliation. Life is a humiliation from the moment you are born, when you are struck by hard hands into life, and you react by crying out your pain as a most reasonable protest against life with its brutality and hard reality, a protest that should reasonably go on all your life. But you learn quickly to submit and then to stay humiliated as an underdog through all your life if you are wise, since that's the best way of survival. You will encounter new humiliations on your crooked Golgotha ordeals of life, but each time you come out alive from your humiliations, you will learn to better face and stand the next one. And thus you might someday reach maturity, still standing after all your crucifixions. The bleeding heart of pious sentimentality. My chief regret in life is all the homes that were uprooted on the way, irretrievably forever lost, with all their memories and laughters, woes and pains and fathomless sincerities, the fondness of the tenderness and human warmth, so sadly lost by carelessness and lack of piety. Unnecessarily forsaken, given up and wasted, sacrificed for lack of care, responsibility, and just for vanity, while all that's left of them is ghosts of memories which never can be turned away nor be denied for their sincerity of immortality. I must regret their loss, since it was forced upon me, being thrown out from my childhood home for just the sake of egoistic interests, and my father shared my grief and melancholy of regrets. While his loss was the greater one, his life's work going down the drain. But even worse was the surrender of our grassroots, our family inheritance since more than 90 years, 2 houses with a lush and splendid garden. By the sea, with all Dame Nature at your service and disposal, a realm of freedom and good health and splendid isolation, although with the deepest scars and painful memories from the tragedy of 3 wars and an ultimate catastrophe, resulting in a melancholy abyss and unfathomable ocean of tears. But that just made the home the deeper loved and cherished, kept the more alive for all its memories. It was sacrificed for blindness to those memories, for suppressing and ignoring and denying them, as if it was no more than just a piece of property to make a profit of. But nothing could dispose of or deny or exile all those memories. A home is the most precious hearth of comfort and of safety, a place to thrive, expand, develop and mature by meditation, and to then dissolve a home must be regarded doubtlessly as supreme a violation and the ultimate inhuman sacrilege. Your eyes. Your eyes will always be the same, no matter what ordeals and crucifixions you have met with through your life, with more than one experience of death, and with more hearts ruthlessly broken and your life more often ruined than could ever be endured and tolerated. But your eyes keep shining still through all your storms of tears, in stalwart and unflinching, piercing clear perception and intelligence, unwaveringly seeing through each human soul and understanding people better than they ever could themselves. And thus you never can be fooled, but will keep shining like a sun that never sets, outshining all the storm clouds and all darkness, as there never was a night that could shut out the loving warmth and dear delight of the bright kindness of your eyes. The bleeding heart. For you, my heart was always bleeding, not for pity, but for empathy and sympathy for all your tribulations, while compassion is what you would call it, all emotions of this kind transcending any form of natural, conventionally normal love, projecting and transforming it to higher levels of, if you'll excuse me, more advanced and metaphysical, or should I say, more supernatural and spiritual heights, as it would be incomprehensible to normal minds, as strange coincidences and intrinsic machinations of capricious destiny organized what humans cannot organize, contriving to the fact that we could never lose each other, and no matter how we tried, and how the sabotage and terror acts of others tried, all just combining in their efforts, thus ultimately bringing us together back again from where we started, at the dawn of all catastrophes. This may appear abstruse to some, and certainly no wonder, as we probably will ever understand it least of all ourselves. Tears of blood. The floods of tears are not enough to cover all the injuries and damages that seized upon us, brutally destroying our lives by meaningless, unnecessary force of violence and madness, but they did not know what they were doing. We have transcended and survived, and have come out of it considerably strengthened, with new powers for the future at our generous disposal, and the tears of blood we shed have turned into a life elixir of prosperity and richness, and unheard of possibilities of love, creation, and expansion. Yes, we cannot doubt it, and although we died and drowned in the deluge of undeserved misfortunes and catastrophes and trials, life is now beginning, like a phoenix of the spring, to gloriously spring forth like stags out of the forest, to climb any mountain rising gloriously, to seize the throne and crown the landscape, by just being there to overlook it all, in the serenity of natural and obvious majesty, as glorious victors of all human possible adversities. The bottomless grave. No grave is deep enough for burying the phantoms of the past, the ghosts that keep on bothering and of reminding you of their existence in unruly turbulence forever. And suppression does not help, but will just aggravate the matter, and keep all the files of buried cases open, and the grave of trash for the disposal of them will just go on sinking deeper, like a China syndrome, the more it is filled up. You have to live with them, endure them, keep them satisfied by your association and support of them, and they might just occasionally at least leave you in peace, while you must always be aware of them. The black holes of love. You love her, but you cannot reach her. There is some mysterious abyss of a distance of 1,000 miles and more of most unfathomable depth, and you risk losing all your bearings and yourself in the frustration of her inaccessibility, a grave of terrible despair that makes her company remind you only the more painfully and palpably of your atrocious loneliness and hopelessness in the seclusion of the agony of the uniqueness of your love. Your only way, then, is to dream about her. Try to catch her in your dreams and long for her, both day and night, in daydreams, nightmares, and hallucinations. And the trauma is repeated constantly in every new affair and pitfall, as you never can avoid the merciless compulsion of Dame Nature to forever bring you back and trap you in the black holes of the urge that never can be satisfied, the inescapable blind alley of the force of love that always and implacably must have its way. established eternity. We are growing old and withering, a fact most inescapable, a rule of law of nature that applies to everyone and every form of life, and we just have to suffer, watching ourselves growing grey and stiff, less agile and more dull for every day, submitting more and more to endless sleep as something of a preparation for the ultimate release of the big sleep that lasts forever. What can we do about it? One thing, though, will not be subject to this aging process, which will actually preserve us or a part of us forever and a day, and that will even be the best part of us, and that is the materialization of our sweetest, loveliest dreams as they will be contained and formed in poetry. The ugliness of crude reality and the abomination of brutality will vanish, while the beauty we create with love will last forever. An die ferne Geliebte. In his later days, the aging Beethoven composed a cycle of 6 intimate and heartfelt songs to his beloved, who was inaccessible and unattainable, whom he called his immortally beloved. But he never mentioned who she was, and ever since that day his listeners have speculated, guessing who she was, but she remains a mystery forever. Those 6 songs became a portal for a great activity of most prolific and inspiring song composing through the entire 19th century by its most qualified composers, Schubert leading with 600 songs and never having been surpassed. In the same way, the Shakespeare poet wrote his sonnets, overflowing with abundant love of deep sincerity to unknown cherished friends and lovers whose identities we never shall be able to find out. In the same way I write to you of love born out of crucifixion, death and sacrifice, in harder mould than any diamond steel, but without ever mentioning your name, as your identity and personality and being is more sacred and inviolable to me than the holiest of all religions, as your best and absolute protection is your anonymity. Unreleased love. This is a trap of most outrageous tribulations, since a love that never is requited with at least an answer will continue gnawing at your heart and fill it up with worries and despair, like some continuous illness only growing worse, or like a mental chronical disease impossible to find relief, escape, or even a detachment from. Like that old phantom out of Sinbad's travels, the relentless old man of the sea, clinging like a monkey on your back, and there never was in all eternity a glimpse of any cure, of any hope. This is the truest hell of your own making. It is a spiritual constipation ever growing worse, and the only possible relief is just the temporary measure of obstinate carrying on and sticking to your love. Perspective. We know each other and we have our common memories, a story of our own and sweetest common friendships as a most unusual advantage shared by few, and yet we only lived together for 6 months, which now appears though as a lifetime, if not longer, as we both felt old already then, so many years ago, yes, practically an eternity ago, in which prolonged, enforced divorce, so much has changed and happened. And yet we are still the same, so young and gay, and carefree without sorrows, although both of us already then were burdened with atrocious trials and adversities. And now there is a war around us raging recklessly, with both our countries more or less involved, as if we had to go through all of this again, which feels too horribly familiar. as if we both had to survive with hardship all the horrors of the Second World War. Memories still being too intrusive from the Warsaw ghetto, as if history was just a constant repetition of the worst that mankind ever could endure. But we survived, and are surviving still, with something of a love saved from eternity, which it is our duty to maintain and foster, and keep warm for even worse eternities to come. Age and timelessness. Are we aging or are we growing younger? It is difficult to say, as time is getting constantly more relative, and we have hardly moved since we were young, still beating about the problems we got stuck in then, which cost us all and almost all our lives, and yet we still are living, and more so than ever, as if time's dimension did not matter, but was only something of a trifle that did not concern us or disturb us. Which brings us to draw remarkable conclusions. We were outside time from the beginning, and with time we only have grown more so. We're still at the beginning, we got never started, we have all our lives to still catch up with, and for all our losses we have not lost anything, and least of all ourselves. We are a match for timelessness, and all we have to do is to keep following the strangeness of our course into not only timelessness, but even out of all dimensions. Longing. When my heart runs wild and blows out of my mind of longing for your graceful presence, cruelly distanced by outrageous obstacles, far too long for toleration, I lie turning over, wide awake all night with the only thought of you, which keeps me desperate alive, considering all those years lost of being out of touch with you. A curious metaphysical phenomenon of an old friend's surprising final death, whom I had thought departed long ago, brought suddenly to mind our common story with a crowd of tender memories. How we just had time for no more than a beginning, when all was broken by the importunity of destiny, as we had to continue separately, making different lives apart, with no hope of reunion. Now suddenly, by this departure of our dearest friend, I found you and remembered all your dear sincerity, and that is how, by something of a miracle, our lives were brought back to its starting point. We have survived the worst, so now we could be in for some freewheeling, while we have to wait and long with patience for the new start of our second journey. No comfort, but perhaps an opportunity. On the loss of a friend's life's companion. There are no words for all the bitterness you feel when your life's best companion finally has given up after a lifetime's struggle against the very worst and most inhuman illness, while at the same time you must share her sense of ultimate relief at being liberated finally from all those years of suffering. It will be selfish to just miss her, while it maybe would be wiser to maintain the contact and just keep her entertained by your communication, although you can't know she would appreciate it or even be aware of it. But since there is a chance, however small, that your communion still could carry on and that it might give her some pleasure on the other side, it could be worth sustaining it. Your love could still go on, although on a completely different level, which could even be worth finding and exploring. As of old, we knew each other then, but never reached each other, since there was another friend involved who had the advantage over me in actually possessing you, whose right of way I could not spite, but had to acquiesce to ruling circumstances and just make the best of it. Time separated us for many years, but still it is as if time never bothered us, but just preserved our flame in delicate obscurity, and safe protection for another opportunity which, as well known, eternity can always offer, in amazing faculty of miraculous inventiveness. Our moment is not here and now, but is perennial in all time but now, as if no temporary moment ever mattered, but eternity was always present. After the storm, we were all blown to pieces, nothing but ruins remained. We could not even cry, we were just stunned into silence, appearing like zombies, and walking like living dead or dead ghosts among the ruins, trying to collect at least our memories, since our senses could not be collected. We just had to move on and continue, doomed to stay alive and carry on in utterly impossible conditions, having to submit to the relentless fact that our survival was a miracle unheard of, unbelievable, as most improbably unnatural. And we could not do anything about it, but to just accept the fact, submit to life, and make the best of it as something of a gift, most undeserved and unexpected, in the debris of our shattered world, which we just were obliged to start creating all over again from the beginning. My friend, what miracle brought you to me? We are quite opposites, but for that very reason match each other perfectly, like hand in glove, which turned from the beginning our collaboration into a miraculous success, which we must quietly, devoutly pray for, that it humbly may continue prospering interminably, but the prospects are, to say the least, quite good. It is a partnership of what I would call some spiritual solidity, since we are colleagues of misfortune, and as such a kind of complementary duality, in some way bringing both the other into safety, so far without risking anything, like perfect business partners. May we carry on in this uniquely win-win business, indefatigably and as long as possible. The disillusionist. He believes in it himself, and lives and earns his livelihood on splendid fantasies, and makes a fortune, but will not be satisfied. He wants to make it better, make more money, getting the idea to use his science fiction fantasies to start a world religion, making it attractive by making it expensive, which attracts all people who want to get better and who happen to have money. Many families and people who get stuck in this attraction, a system that makes sense and works, its theories impossible to prove or disprove, the business thriving on naivety, and people falling for their own delusions, find themselves not only ruined but cheated of their lives, and will be wrecked for life, stuck in a devastating trauma of regret, remorse, and endless bitterness. He doesn't care. He keeps the truth of his delusions to himself, having made his millions in the bargain, ending up the loneliest man of all.